We told you we'll talk a little NFL. John Clayton, Washington Post article that we were diving into on this Dak Prescott. Mahomes signs a $500 million deal. Does it affect guys like Dak Prescott positively, negatively at all? Where does that all stand? We'll get into some more NFL stuff. The news from the Ravens today, obviously what's going on locally here with DeSean Jackson and more as we bring in John Clayton, Washington Post, also 710 ESPN Seattle, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline as we take a look at the NFL getting a little closer, we hope, to starting. John, welcome back. How you been?
Good. How are you?
All is well. So the football world, which is in limbo right now, it seems, got rocked on Monday with that huge Mahomes deal over $500 million. And you look at a guy like Dak Prescott, who you wrote about for the Washington Post, and obviously kind of an intriguing story in the NFC East. And kind of where's that sitting? What did that deal do for Dak? Did it help? Did it hurt? Did it do anything?
I don't think it did anything for Dak. If anything, it puts an interesting situation for Deshaun Watson, who has the ability to ask for something close to $40 million. But here's what's interesting about the deal, and I think it's going to be, cause some ripple effects, because even though this deal is massive, it's the biggest in NFL history, one of the biggest in sports history, is that it's team-friendly. Because when you look at the details of the deal, I mean, he was scheduled to make $27.2 million over the next 2 years. He's going to get $27.2 million over the next 2 years. They rejuggled it. They gave him a $10 million signing bonus included in that. But, it keeps the same cap number and it keeps the same payout. And so what you're looking at, and NFL teams view it one way, agents view it another way. In new money, this is $45 million, $450 over 10 years. But the fact that it was such a delayed start, and if you look at the way the deal breaks down, in the first 3 years, it's $39.3. If you would take it to 12 years, he's going to be a Kansas City Chief, then the number basically comes out to $39.8. So really, where everybody thought that Mahomes easily would be the first $40 million contract, it really is. But the way this thing is proportioned, one, he was friendly to the team, kind of like Tom Brady, in the sense that it's like, okay, I'll give you your cap numbers every year that you can work around and try to get me the best talent available. That's what Tom Brady did after every contract since 2000. He did a 2010 contract, but from 2013 on. In this deal, what you can see is that if you view it as 39.8, that's going to put a little pressure on Watson to get over 40, because, the deal is, the money he's going to make exclusive of the incentives and anything else is really 39.8 as opposed to 45. And, that puts, I think, Watson in a position where he may have to take 39. He still could stack in the area where he probably has to get 35. And the next person to top the Mahomes deal will be Russell Wilson. But what's interesting about this, and this is why it's team-friendly, if Watson does a 4-year deal, if Dak Prescott does a 4-year deal, they'll each have a chance to go back when the cap's going to be significantly higher and probably top $45 million. So it's an interesting thing, but, what Dak was, because, I still think he gets something done. But when you look at Mahomes, he basically said, listen, I need players on this team. I'll give you some things. You give me some things. We'll make the trade-off. $45 million for the new money. Hey, I'm fine.
John Clayton with us. So July 15th is the deadline for the Cowboys. If he doesn't sign that, he plays on the 1-year deal that he signed, the franchise tag. But what kind of position does that put the Cowboys in then moving forward?
It's a tough position because they have 7 players next year, the core group of their team, that has a combined cap number of $106 million. And so that includes $22 million for Amari Cooper. That includes $22 million for DeMarcus Lawrence. It was 13 for Ezekiel Elliott, and you have 3 offensive linemen, making in excess of $10 million under the cap. And so if you would have to take the franchise tag at $37.7 for a second franchise tag, now you're talking $143 million, of what might be a level cap at $198.2. It doesn't work. And so what needs to be done is that Jerry Jones needs to work some kind of a deal that gets some money for this year and next year, so you can maybe roll some money over, because they've only got $11 million of cap room as we speak. And you do the deal with Dak, you get a lower cap number next year, and it gives you, the ability to keep more players. And if it's going to be 37-7, Jerry's going to probably have to put the exclusive tag on, and that's 39-4. And so you would have everything tied up in 8 players, and so it really is incumbent upon Jerry to get something done just to manage things.
Do you sense that the Cowboys are questioning if Dak is the guy long term at all?
No, I don't think so. I think that, you can see there's never been any variance as far as what Jerry Jones has thought about Dak Prescott. The guy's won close to 66% of his games. He's completed, at one point it was 66% of his passes. And, not only has he been able to get to the playoffs, but he did get a playoff win. And so, that puts him every year in a position, as long as, they don't underachieve, that they can win 10 or 11 games. And so, no, there's no question. In fact, if you even look at even some of the analytical things, he's worth 2 or 3 games to their record, and so he's that good. So no, I don't think Jerry varies on that. Let's put it this way: if he does, and let's say that he lets him go next year, they're going to drop off significantly. No, Dak Prescott is the real deal. He's not the best quarterback. He's, and I think you're starting to see, particularly in this week, more people putting out who's, and Jeremy Fowler did this, and I think he had Dak as the 9th best quarterback in the league, but that's still pretty good.
Yeah, and you look at the repercussions if they had to franchise him again next year. That would really put them in, as you wrote at the Washington Post, John Clayton, our guest, they might have to cut 2 high-profile players if they did that, and you wonder how much this COVID might affect the cap next year.
Yeah, because, it's pretty simple to say right now, the $10 million increase that's been going on since about 2013 is gone. That's not going to happen. And now it's a matter of figuring it out. That's why you see there's tough negotiations going on right now to see how they can salvage next year's cap and keep it close to where it is. The owners came up with the idea. It's like, okay, let's put 35% of your salary in escrow. And that went over like a lead balloon. So that's not going to happen. You can borrow cap money from next year. And, of course, the players also know it's like, hey, listen, the owners aren't going to go broke in this situation, because what nobody seems to mention is that, you remember, this is the first year for Vegas, a Vegas team, and new 2 teams in Los Angeles moving to a new stadium. That's $165 million per team of the 29 teams that's going to get a relocation fee. So that covers for a little bit of the losses that they're going to have.
Speaking of money, Clowney is still out there looking for his money. What's the update on him?
Well, it's interesting because, again, he's a great player. He really is. But it looks like he's a bad negotiator. Now, his agent is good because it's Bus Cook, Brett Favre's old agent. But I think Clowney's controlling this. But he was asking for more than $22 million when he's not a sack guy. He's had no double-digit sack seasons. And if you have double-digit sack seasons, then you can get to $20+ million. He waited 2 weeks into free agency before lowering his demands to 17. But by that time, with all the injuries that he's had during his career, he's missed 20 games. He had a core surgery last year, microfracture to start his career. You have to give a physical. Well, there's no physicals, and there hasn't been since the second week of free agency. So he turned down about 17.5 from the Browns. He turned down about 18.5 from the Dolphins. Then he was at 17, and nobody met that demand. And so one by one, he's starting to lose teams to go to. This week, Seattle offered between 13 and 16, as high as 16 million, and he didn't even make a counter offer on that. And so then the other day, Olivier Vernon, ended up taking a pay cut from 15.5 to 11 million on a 1-year deal that was mostly guaranteed. And by doing that, that eliminated Cleveland from the offer because they were offering about 12 million at the end. So that's done. So now his value is probably down to 9 or 10 million on a 1-year deal. Tennessee's interested, but they can't get him to a physical. They have Vic Beasley making 9.5 on a 1-year deal. I would doubt, because Beasley did come there for less amount of money that he wanted, that they can't go over that with Clowney because it'll upset Beasley. And then you can see that the Raiders made a low pitch, probably at about 7 or 8, and Seattle, I think, still could get him at 10. But I get the feeling that if he's going to play for half of what he was expecting, he may just take the tack. I'm not going to go to training camp and get the virus. I'm not going to risk my body, and I'm just going to wait till the end. And if I have to play for less, I'll sign right before the start of the season.
Now, a while back, John, his name was kind of tied in with the Eagles. Is that just because the Eagles are always seemingly tied, that Roseman makes his calls, or is it legit interest, and would he be interested in Philadelphia?
Well, I mean, he's going to be interested in Philadelphia because one of the things and one of the reasons he turned down Cleveland is that he wants to go to a winning team. And he turned down Miami twice because he didn't expect them to be a winning team. But I'd have to think what it comes down to because, Howie Rosen kind of, he's one of the best cap guys and one of the best cap money managers in the league. If it's the right price, he'll come down and do it. Right now, it's not essential that they do this. And remember, I mean, they have to save as much as they can to roll it over with all the contracts they have to cut next year because they're $60 million over the cap. But I think if it's a low price, they might do it. But right now, I'd say probably no.
Because with the cap stuff, as you mentioned, that's what I wrote down. 1 year, $9 to $10 million. He might have to get in that range. That sounds like something that Philly could fit it in for a year, like they did with Michael Bennett or so a year ago, where they just take you for a year, pay you a lot, and then you're out.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, in that case, because figuring this guy is that good as far as a talent, he'll get his money next year somewhere. Because again, the reason he didn't get it this year, he was overzealous in what he was asking for, and then he also, was just late in making the adjustments for salary. I mean, if he does leave the team, which is most likely, they'll get a third-round compensatory pick, so that would be something that would be appealing too. But I still think in the end, when they're that far over the cap, and they're going to let a lot of veteran players go, that's still going to be a tough fit.
John Clayton, 710 ESPN, The Washington Post, his article on Dak Prescott. What is the scuttlebutt right now with where this Washington, team name thing is going? There's been reports that the Native American people have said no one's reached out to them. They were expecting meetings with the Redskins. It hasn't gone anywhere. They don't want. We know that Snyder did not want to change the name, but when FedEx got involved, Nike, now Amazon, is it inevitable that they will not have that moniker?
Yeah, it's a matter of when, not if, because the name has to change. Because right now, Dan's blocked it about just about everything. I mean, he's got 3 minority owners that want out, and they want name changes. He's got DC people that he's talking to about a new stadium. They're not going to build anything for him or help him build anything, with the idea that their name's going to be the Redskins. He's got sponsorships like Pepsi now wanting to get out. You've got Nike getting out. Right now, Amazon and Target are taking Redskin paraphernalia out of their stores and online, and so he's losing. He's going to start potentially losing money. So what he needs to do is, as quick as possible, find the right name to change it, because I don't think he has any choice but to change it because the finances now are dictating it.
The Ravens are reducing their 2020 seating capacity to less than 14,000. It does seem like it's trending towards the NFL losing fans in the stands. What is the next step for them to properly prepare for this?
Well, again, it's not a league matter. It's a team-by-team matter, and they have to clear everything with the local municipalities. And so that's why you can see when Baltimore said the idea is like, okay, no season tickets going to the season ticket holders. We're going to push that into next year, and your money will count towards next year. And then if we do anything, we'll get 14,000 people in the seats. But you notice it was a big if when they put out the letter and they put everything on the site, because I don't think that they think they're going to get approved by the Baltimore area to be able to even have 14,000 people in the seats. And so, it's still a possibility. And of course, then they have to start figuring out, okay, which season ticket holders are going to get the opportunity to be among the 14,000. But it looks like that's the best case scenario. Detroit may be doing something very similar to that. The Buffalo Bills have been told that they can't have anybody in the stadium. And now everybody's starting to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? And so the likelihood is you may have some in stadiums around the league, but not a lot.
All right, we'll leave you with this. Here on the East Coast, DeSean Jackson, obviously here in Philly, this has been a huge story. Has this story kind of made its way across to your side of the country in Seattle? The NFL put out their statement. I mean, it seems that the NFL put the statement out and kind of said, Eagles, you do what you want with this. Do you anticipate the league getting involved with DeSean Jackson, or will the Eagles really handle this?
Yeah, the league won't where they should do anything to DeSean Jackson. This has to be a team matter and a team decision. And my guess would be if he played any other position than wide receiver, then he might have been cut or might be suspended. Because remember, if you suspend him, depending on the language in his contract, that $4.8 million of base salary guarantee, would be voided, and then you don't have to take the $4.8 million payment and hit on the cap for that. And so I think what the Eagles have to decide, do they want to suspend him for that? But then the problem is, You know how the team was at wide receiver last year. Can you really afford to lose DeSean Jackson, the wide receiver, even though he missed a lot of time last year with injuries? So it's a tough decision to go. Certainly, these comments were ridiculous. I mean, and DeSean, I think, at least has started to go ahead calling rabbis, meeting with rabbis, trying to make amends for this. And if he does a good job, then they won't suspend him. But still, the possibility of a suspension is there, and particularly if it's a possibility that it could allow them to wipe out the guarantee in his contract.
Real quick, John, we know Seattle was kind of hit very hard. Where are you guys now with everything coronavirus? Is that kind of flattened a little bit?
Yeah, it's flattened. I mean, we're not doing as. I mean, even though the numbers look big, because they're testing more than they've ever tested, and there's different spikes. I mean, for example, at UW, they went around to frat houses and they found out that 85 youngsters ended up having positive tests for partying too much, which is, of course, welcome to America right now. But for the most part, I mean, it's been in that 6% range, which is up a little bit because for the longest time it was down in 4% on positive tests. I mean, the death toll has dropped down a little bit, but the fact that they are testing more is leading to at least more positive tests. But for the most part, the governor of the state, Governor Inslee, has done a great job of handling this because he's been very cautious. We're still at that stage where you can go into restaurants. We're definitely into stage 2 or phase 2. And so, considering the alternatives and how it's going wild in the rest of the country, we're basically it's worse than when it started. They've done a real good job here.
So that thought from you who knows the league wide, do you anticipate there'll be fans in the stadiums this year in NFL games? I mean, what is your take on how NFL games will look?
I would lean toward thinking that the players will get their way and there'll be no preseason games because why risk it on a game that doesn't count, and also getting injuries, because that's the other part of it too. As you saw in 2011 when there was nothing in the off season because of the lockout, that you're going to have ACLs and Achilles and all those injuries coming up, hamstring injuries. So why risk that? I still tend to doubt that there'll be fans in the stands. But again, it's not a league-wide thing. It's a city-by-city area type of thing. So there may be some in some cities, but I think majority of them probably won't.
All right, John Clayton, Washington Post, 710 ESPN Seattle, and, of course, right here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. John, we appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks.
All right, John Clayton, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.